Hello, and welcome to Self-Care is Sexy. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host. We're a weekly podcast that's here to generate and share self-care ideas with each other. Last week, we did a show on 10 not-so-sexy self-care ideas. Now, if you struggle with making time for yourself and you want to work with some not-so-flashy, not-so-sexy, but deeper parts of self-care, make sure you check it out. You can find all our past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, PodNation, and at our website, www.selfcareissexy.com. Make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss a show. Make you the priority today. Okay, I want to give you a quick preview of what to expect from today's show. Today, I'm bringing you an interview that I did with a police officer who found themselves dealing with some serious backlash after a harmless incident that was unfairly categorized as an act of racism. And this story is pretty amazing and kind of heartbreaking, so I invite you to join me. But first, a few quick housekeeping notes. Okay, so something I need to recognize before we get started with today's interview. First and foremost, this show is about self-care. We listen to other people's stories to gain an understanding on how we can learn to better love ourselves. And before I did this interview, I did not know the story that's about to unfold. I was hearing it for the first time, as many of you are right now. And I just want to say that the opinions and the views expressed by my guest are their own. This is their story. And it's a story of how quickly your life can change and how you can be tested, how you can go to bed one night and wake up to a completely different world the next morning, when other people's opinions of you and what you've done is completely the opposite of everything you stand for, and the self-care that saves you from that. Now, I recognize that the larger story here is about the Black Lives Matter movement and how police can do a better job in training and support and all the things. And I also recognize the need to uncover my own unconscious bias and racism and deal with it. I know it's my responsibility to understand how I play a role in systematic racism. And presenting this story to you today is about this individual's experience. I do realize that there is another side to this story that needs to be told. And if you have a self-care story that you want to share, please reach out to me via email. It's Chris, K-R-I-S, at selfcareissexy.com. Please join me in welcoming Officer Tiff to the show.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, especially this close to the holiday. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Thank
awesome.
you.
No
Why
worries.
don't you take a quick second and just introduce yourself to our listeners and maybe just tell us a little bit about where you're from, who you are, kind of what you do.
All right. My name is Tiffany. I'm 32, I think. Yeah, I'm 32. I've been a police officer for, I think, about four and a half years now. Recently married to my beautiful, beautiful wife, Cassie. Yes, it's, I think, 2 months now we've been married, been together for about 6.5 years, probably 7, and she's going to get mad at me for not remembering that, but that's okay.
Those are the important details your wife wants you to know.
Hey, if I remember the anniversary of our wedding, I think I'll be okay. I come from a small town, south in Raymond area. Not a lot of people know where that's at. On the coast, kind of close to Long Beach. That's kind of how I like to explain it, and then people usually know where that's at. Yeah, I come from I got one brother. I got a ton of cousins, super close with my grandparents, and I grew up playing softball, went to college for softball, always been an athlete, and even to this day, I am an avid fitness fiend. I'm always working out if I can. And actually, before I was a cop, I was a fitness instructor for 8 years, and it was
right on.
It was honestly one of the best jobs I've ever had. So it was hard to leave, but I had a bigger calling.
So what made you decide to become a cop? I mean, fitness obviously is an important part of it, I'm sure, but what was kind of that last, like, yeah, I got to do this. This is what I'm meant to do.
When I was growing up, I always wanted to be a cop, and I used to tell my mom I wanted to be one of two things. I wanted to be an NBA star, which wasn't going to happen, or
what?
Or
No.
yeah. I mean, my 5'4". Yeah. So I would joke. I would say I wanted to be a basketball star or be a cop. And I grew up in a really rough family. My dad was a piece of crap, and so the only time I ever really felt safe was when the cops came. So I was like, I want to be that. I want to be a cop. But I went away from it. I'm pretty transparent. I got in some trouble when I was 18 that prevented me from becoming a cop. And then I fell into fitness, and I loved it, and I kind of put the cop on the back burner. And then I started to train a couple of cops, and they're like, "Why aren't you a cop?" And I told them why, and they're like, "That's so stupid. You could have became a cop a long time ago." So, my own fault for not doing research. But at the end of the day, looking back, there's a reason why I became a trainer, and it was amazing. So, that's kind of the gist of it.
That's awesome, and it's important that I'm really glad that you recognize, like, you can want whatever you want, but you don't get to plan the schedule, right? Like,
right.
You gotta take the time to get there. So that's awesome, though, that they were encouraging.
Yeah.
So you've been a police officer for 4 years now, yeah?
Yep.
Right. And so, do you mind, if you're comfortable, speaking about how it's been for you? Being a police officer right now is kind of a challenging thing. So, have you had some experiences like that?
Yes, and I will apologize now. It'll seem contradictory because it's just been such a roller coaster. This has been the hardest time of my career. I haven't been a cop for very long, but this has definitely been the absolute hardest time as a cop, as a woman, as just a human. It's just difficult. The climate of policing right now is, as we all know, it's not good. I've asked my coworkers that have been cops for 20 years, and I'm like, this is the worst we've seen it.
Not a really good time to like.
No. So those that are getting into it right now, I applaud them because it's not easy right now. Just it in the beginning when everything happened with George Floyd, we had protests in downtown where I work, and we had great conversations with people in the protest, and if we would have joined in the protest. We agreed that what happened to him was ridiculous. I still feel that way. It just is so awful what happened. And I tell people, I'm like, that never would have happened where I work. I know that. The way we train, we're very lucky for the training that we get. And it's a lot more than a lot of other departments get. And a lot of people don't understand that. So in the beginning, it was awesome. Like, I was like, yes, March, this needs to happen. Black Lives Matter, 100%. There's no argument. And then the tides kind of turned. It seemed like it was like the people that were protesting Black Lives Matter kind of went away, and we got all these wanting to create havoc and break stuff and burn stuff. And that was difficult, just losing the people that were marching for the right reasons and getting people that kind of were on a different agenda and were spewing more hate than good, and especially towards us. And that was hard. It still is hard. I mean, it's still happening.
Did you receive direct threats or taunting, or did you personally experience some of that backlash and negativity from the people just wanting to cause chaos?
Oh, every time we had some sort of protest, some sort of, I hate to say riot, some sort of riot, yes. I didn't want to, I didn't want to talk about my photo thing, but I will. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
I know a little bit of the backstory, but I want to make sure, in the efforts of self-care that you really are mindful of what's best for you. I would love to hear this story because I've only heard bits and pieces and don't know the full facts, and would love to hear your side of it, as well as talking about, how you've been able to take care of yourself through this climate.
So I'll try to make it quick because I know we've got time, but so we had a protest downtown, and I was kind of in the middle of it, if you will, and it lasted for a few hours, and then I had to go back to my normal patrol shift, which is I work graveyard, and I work on the west side of my city, and so before I went back to patrol, one of my coworkers was like, "Hey, there's a group of veterans up on the west side guarding a gun store and they're all armed." And I said, "Okay."
Oh my gosh.
Right. He's like, "So they're all armed. They're guarding a gun store." And backstory, so the city had sent out an email earlier in the day and said, "Hey, everyone needs to go home. There's a planned Antifa protest, and they plan to break windows and rob stores." Was the gist of what the email was. Is like, "Hey, you need to go home. This is supposed to happen."
So the city, they got a credible threat. It wasn't just random, just wasn't just chatter on the radio. It was a credible threat from the city. Okay.
Yeah, it was. We saw the flyer from the group that had planned this march that was supposed to turn violent, and so the group on the west side had gotten an invitation from the gun store saying, "Hey, we know the police are going to be busy downtown. Can you please come and guard the gun store so these people don't break in and steal guns?" That was the gist of what had happened. And so I go back on patrol, and I get a noise complaint at this gun store because there's a bunch of people outside. It's 1:00 in the morning. Or it might have been, I don't remember the exact time, but it was in the morning. And I radio up to go to this noise complaint, knowing that one of my coworkers had already talked to these gentlemen, and he said they were fine. They're not a bad group. They're a bunch of veterans with guns. And I'm like, okay, I feel safe that my coworker's already spoken to them. So I rolled up in my car, and I got out, and I was like, "Hey guys, what's up?" And they immediately waved to me and were like, "Oh, did you get a noise complaint?" And I was like, "Why, yes, I did." And
turns out,
yes, I did. And they're like, "Oh, okay, we're sorry, and no worries, we'll keep it down," because they were kind of close to an apartment complex, so I think that's where the noise complaint generated from, and I would probably call too. So, I walked up, I felt comfortable. They all greeted me. It wasn't like I was going into this thinking I was going to get into some shootout or something, but I felt comfortable enough to go up and talk to them and just kind of figure out what they were about, because I always like to see what's going on. And so I just asked who they were, and they told me they were a group called the 3 Percenters, but they were the Washington 3%, not the 3 Percenters of the nation or something like that. So I was like, okay, well, tell me more about you guys. And they were like, "Oh, we're a group of veterans. We help homeless people. We help veterans. We're a nonprofit through the state. We have a website." And I basically just sat there and chatted with them for a bit. And at the end, they're like, "Hey, can we get a photo with you?" And my department's huge on community policing and taking photos and being involved. And so I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I'll take a photo with you. No big deal." And then backstory, I also took a ton of photos with people in the protest, people wearing Black Lives Matter stuff. So it wasn't like I was only taking photos with certain people.
Right. It's not like you specifically sought this group out. It was just opportunistic.
Right. And I think about this call and about the conversation with these